Chairman Tucker, Mr. Tucker, board members. You got the.
Yeah, it's right there.
Of course, as far as Alleghany is concerned, our first thing we want to make sure we're working to make sure they don't have to take a retest. So we're working with our instruction to get them through the test the first time. So, but when we do have students that have retests, we look at their individual categories on what they're doing, didn't do so well on, and then we focus on those areas to improve for the next time around. And if there's several students in the same area, we team them up with a teacher for that individual area and then go from there. Starting with the students that have retakes, now we've already started breaking down the data on each individual student. The teachers have been working in common planning groups for their individual areas to, like I said, focus on what they're having problems with.
First of all, thank you. I don't like lines. 74, 75% isn't what we're aiming for. And expedited retakes are one of the reasons why we ended up where we are, and we're not going to end up there again. Also, 49% doesn't make me happy either, and neither does it the teachers. Out of our students, as you could see, there were 66 students who missed 18 or more days. We're not going to let it be 66 students this year. We're going to contact early. Ms. Hobbs has worked with some of the state plan that we're required to do, and Ms. Dew will be spearheading that state plan, which requires us to make contact at certain points with parents and their students as to absences. The first contact is at 5 days, so we're not messing around. Like Alleghany High School, one of the things that we want to do is targeted in our remediation when we have our students. The first thing that we start with is when our biggest thing this year has been Falcon time. We've already built that into our schedule. We have a 6-period day now instead of a block schedule. So students are receiving enrichment, because anything that is above and beyond what their learning ability is enrichment. So right now we have a tiered system where every student is met at their level within the classroom, all of those together. When we get toward expedited retakes, what will happen is parents will be notified and they will come in for a conference. What we had a problem with last year was that parents did not come in for those conferences. Those teachers would work hard to remediate those kids, and then they would not show up the day of the SOL retake. So we can't pull them in if they're not there. So a parent will come in, we'll meet with them, and we will sign a contract with the parent and the student that if we do all this hard work and the teachers do all this hard work with them, we expect them to show up to school that day. Also, remediation will take place over a 4 to 5 day span. We do have 66-minute class periods. Falcon time is also 50 minutes. We made sure, Ms. Fox and I, when we built our SOL testing schedule, and she is the guru. This woman is fabulous. In our testing plan, that we made enough days in between our testing schedule that we could accommodate that targeted time for us to be able to remediate our students. And as Mr. Katulka said, you want to hit those standards hard and over a short period of time, because the longer you drag it out, the less intense that information becomes. One of the things that we also want to do is that we want to homogeneously group those kids. You want the same kids who miss the same strands and the same standards put together. The other thing that you want to do is put them with the teacher who taught them and a teacher who is extremely competent in those strands and standards. So we have those teachers team teach in those core areas. It has been highly successful in the past, and it has been teachers who have had test scores that have exceeded in the past. One of the things that we also do is we look at skill and drill students individual by question. That's really important, and a lot of times you can tell a lot by students with individual questions, because a lot of times what you learn, especially in IA testing and in regular testing, is that if everybody missed the question, you either didn't teach it right or it's a bad question. And most of the time when I taught, I took it personally and I took accountability and I didn't teach it right. So I went back and grabbed it. Like I said, students will also work with not only their classroom teacher and another teacher, but our special education teachers will push in as well, because we have to make sure that we're not only accredited, but Mr. Persinger, we're going for 90%. I'm not going for 75. So that's where we are.
It's kind of interesting that we're talking about retakes. I have a passion because we've only had retakes at the elementary and middle school level for 3 years. So it's something relatively new. And I dare say it was about 3 years ago, I know at my school that if we had not had the expedited retakes, we would have been a school needing improvement in some form. It was the expedited retakes that got us over that hump. And when the scores started coming in, we're almost like, yes, we've got it. We need 3 more to pass, we need 2 more to pass, or whatever it is. I'm not sure that we have any strategies too different from what you've heard, except we're taking it down a notch because we're dealing with elementary students. We get a data sheet, and we look at the strands that we need to work with the children on. We provide a minimum of 5 hours of remediation from the time we get that score that's not at the passing rate until they retake the test. In many cases, teachers are providing more than that. We schedule the test once the teachers let us know that the child's ready to retake the test. I talk personally with the parents about the importance of the retake, having their child ready. It's another opportunity. It's sort of good news and bad news. Bad news is they didn't pass, but the good news is that they're close enough and we think that we can make that benchmark give us another chance. We provide extra practice year-long, but particularly at the retake time, using particular websites that teachers have found that are beneficial. And I'm in the process of talking to Delegate Austin. I've done an informal survey of principals around the state asking to lower the retake rate. Probably something around 360, whether this will pass or not. But I had an interesting year where I had 2 children, the parents didn't talk to each other. But the parent called me and did my child pass the test? No. Well, I sent him to school and he was sick. Well, why'd you send him to school? Well, I thought he had to be there. It was SOL. We've got an attendance policy. In each case, one score was a 359, one was a 361. There's a process that you go through where you can ask with approval from the superintendent here, you ask the people in Richmond if the child would be allowed with those extenuating circumstances to be able to retake the test, and the child passed the test and did a lot better, and their scores were, as I said, were not at the rate that they normally would have been able to retake that. So we're in the process of working on that, and the bad part is it might mean more retakes, but the good part is what we've said all along, particularly with elementary children. They're taking the SOL test, they're doing their Super Bowl, they're doing something that's very important, and some of them are very scared about it because it's the first time an 8-year-old's ever done something like that.
Retakes at the elementary level were new to me last year, along with everything else that was new to me at the elementary level. But one thing that definitely was different than the high school level when I was handling retakes there is that elementary has a computer adaptive testing, which means when they take the first test and then they take the retake, it's not going to be the same exact test. And I'm not just talking about the wording of the questions. For example, a computer adaptive test, when you take the first question, if you get it right, the next question is a little bit harder. If you get it incorrect, then the next question will drop. And so throughout the course of the test, you might get a high-level question, you might get a low-level question. So when you go to take a retake, it's the same way. So the level of, even though the information and the strands are the same, the level and the rigor of the question may be different. So what we did is each grade level tried their own way of handling retakes and remediation. At the end of the year, of course, we figured out which was the most successful. And what had ended up happening was the group that was the most successful ended up being my 5th graders when it came to retakes. And one thing that that group did that was completely different is they didn't just wait to remediation time. They took their classes during regular instructional time, even though they were reviewing for math, for example, they were reviewing for science. Even though it was language arts retake they were remediating for, they put all of those students in one room. So they took the classes, mixed them up based on who had retakes, who had enrichment, and who had just basic remedial building up those reading skills. And so they actually received instructional time and remediation time. So instead of the required 5 hours, that grade level will receive 10 hours of remediation before taking that. So they were able to review and get the remediation. And so that's what we plan to continue for next year, because that's the grade level that worked. And I got really nervous, and I remember telling Mrs. Stanton, the assistant principal, that before 5th grade took, I'm like, I don't know if we're going to make it. Like, I don't know if we're going to make it, because I needed so many of those 5th graders to pass, and it really came down to 1 or 2 students. And I remember walking up to the teachers and saying, if it's not unprofessional, I want to kiss you, because truly those teachers, what they did worked. And so that's what we are going to now use with all grade levels.
Explain if you have any questions. The thing that I see, and I don't know if it involves the other elementary schools or in the state, but the trend I've seen over 3 years since we've had retakes is that the amount of retakes each year is dropping, which is fine. I'm good with that, because what we're doing is we're getting the kids that are closer to 400 to get over the hump without having to retake. So, I mean, I think my first year was around 39, last year was around 35, this year's mid-20s. So I look for it to keep going down. Percentage-wise, you know, we'll take half of that. I mean, if I have 3 kids pass or 4 kids pass, you know, and 8 took it, that's great. You know, I don't have a problem with either one of those rates. Obviously, you know, we're lucky to have 63% of our kids miss 18 more days pass, but I look for that trend to continue, in my school at least, with the decreasing amount of retakes, and that's obviously a good sign for us.